The coffee was getting cold again, but Dr. Olivia Martinez didn't notice. She had been staring at the same screen for 3 hours straight, her eyes burning from the bright displays that filled the control room of the Arecibo Space Observatory. Something was wrong with the data coming in from deep space, and it was keeping her awake at night. It started small, like most world-changing discoveries do. Just a tiny blip on the radar that most people would have ignored. But Olivia wasn't. Most people. She had spent the last 15 years of her life studying the stars, learning their patterns, understanding their movements. And what she was seeing now made absolutely no sense. The first strange signal came in on a Tuesday morning in November 2023. Olivia was running her usual checks on the deep space monitoring equipment when she noticed something odd. A cluster of stars in the Vega system was behaving differently than usual. They were moving in perfect formation, almost like they were being controlled by something. At first, she thought it was just a computer error. These things happened all the time. In space research, equipment failed, data got corrupted, and sometimes the computers just made mistakes. But when she ran the same scan 3 more times, she got the same results every single time. The stars were definitely moving together. And they were moving with purpose. Olivia called her colleague, Dr. James Park, who worked at the European Space Agency in France. James had been studying space phenomena for even longer than she had, and if anyone could explain what she was seeing, it would be him. "James, you need to look at something for me," she said, sending him the data through their secure network. "Tell me I'm going crazy." 20 minutes later, her phone rang. "Olivia, where did you get this data?" James sounded worried, which was unusual for him. He was normally the calmest person she knew. "From our deep space array? Why? What do you think it means?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I think you need to contact the Global Space Monitoring Center immediately, and Olivia. Don't share this data with anyone else until we understand what we're dealing with." That phone call changed everything. Within 48 hours, Olivia found herself sitting in a secure conference room in Geneva, surrounded by the world's top space scientists, military officials, and government representatives. The room was filled with tension as she presented her findings to people who had the power to change the course of human history. The data was undeniable. Over the past 6 months, telescopes around the world had been picking up similar patterns from different parts of the galaxy. Star systems that had remained stable for millions of years were suddenly showing coordinated movement. It wasn't random, and it wasn't natural. Dr. Chen Wei, the director of the Chinese National Space Administration, was the first to voice what everyone was thinking. These movements are too precise to be accidental. Something is organizing these star systems, and that something has intelligence. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. For the first time in human history, they had found evidence of organized intelligence on a galactic scale. But this wasn't the friendly first contact that science fiction movies had prepared them for. This looked like preparation for something much more serious. Over the next few weeks, more data poured in from observatories around the world. The patterns were becoming clearer, and they were becoming more frightening. At least 30 different star systems were involved in whatever was happening, and they were all moving toward the same general area of space. They were moving toward Earth. The military analysts were brought in next. General Rodriguez from the United States Space Force took one look at the data and immediately classified it as a potential threat to national security. But this wasn't just about one nation anymore. This was about the survival of the entire human race. Dr. Yuki Tanaka from the Japanese Space Agency made a discovery that sent chills through everyone in the room. The star systems weren't just moving randomly toward Earth. They were positioning themselves in a pattern that looked remarkably similar to military formations used in naval warfare. "If I didn't know better," she said during one late-night briefing, "I would say they're preparing for a coordinated attack." The evidence kept mounting. Radio telescopes picked up encrypted communications between the star systems. The signals were too complex for human technology to decode, but the pattern was clear. These civilizations were talking to each other, planning something together. Dr. Martinez found herself working around the clock. barely sleeping as she tried to understand the scope of what they were facing. The more she learned, the more terrified she became. This wasn't just one alien civilization making contact. This was an entire galactic community that had been watching Earth, studying humanity, and apparently deciding that humans posed some kind of threat. The breakthrough came when the team at the Australian Deep Space Communication Complex managed to partially decode one of the intercepted messages. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear enough to make everyone's blood run cold. The message mentioned Earth by name. It talked about the aggressive species and the growing threat. Most disturbing of all, it referenced something called containment protocols. Dr. Park, who had been working with linguistic experts to decode more of the alien communications, delivered the news that nobody wanted to hear during an emergency session in December 2023. Based on what we've been able to translate, it appears that humanity has been under observation for several decades. These civilizations view our rapid technological advancement in space exploration as a threat to what they call galactic stability. They're discussing options for dealing with us, and none of those options involve peaceful coexistence. The room erupted in heated discussions. Some officials wanted to immediately begin preparing Earth's defenses. Others argued for attempting communication and diplomacy. But everyone agreed on one thing: humanity was facing the greatest challenge in its history, and they were completely unprepared for it. As winter turned to spring in 2024, the evidence became overwhelming. The galactic civilizations weren't just watching anymore. They were actively preparing for some kind of intervention. Probe ships had been detected at the edge of the solar system, carefully studying Earth's defenses and cataloging human military capabilities. Dr. Martinez stood before the United Nations Security Council in March 2024, presenting the findings. That would change the course of human civilization forever. The evidence was clear, undeniable, and terrifying. Earth was not alone in the universe, and the neighbors were not friendly. Based on all available data, she concluded her presentation, we have approximately 6 months before this galactic Confederation completes its preparations. Whatever they're planning to do to humanity, it's going to happen soon. And we need to be ready. The age of humanity's innocence was over. The galaxy had noticed Earth, judged it, and found it wanting. What happened next would determine whether the human race would survive to see another century, or whether Earth would become just another cautionary tale told by alien civilizations about the dangers of letting aggressive species develop too. Quickly, the discovery that had started with a cup of cold coffee and a curious scientist was about to reshape everything humanity thought it knew about its place in the universe. The meeting room in the underground bunker beneath the Swiss Alps had never seen anything like this before. Presidents, prime ministers, and military leaders from every major nation on Earth sat around a massive oval table, their faces grim as they discussed humanity's response to the greatest threat in history. The air was thick with tension, and everyone knew that the decisions made in this room would determine the fate of every person on the planet. President Isabella Shun of the Global Defense Council stood at the head of the table, holding a document that would change everything. For 3 months, the world's best scientists and military strategists had been working on humanity's response to the galactic threat. What they had created was bold, desperate, and absolutely terrifying. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was about to announce. We are about to send a message that will be heard across the entire galaxy. There is no going back from this moment. The message had been crafted carefully by teams of linguists, diplomats, and military experts. It was translated into 17 different alien languages that had been partially decoded from the intercepted communications. The content was simple, direct, and carried a threat that would make even ancient civilizations pause. Dr. Michael Torres, the lead scientist on the quantum weapons program, had been working day and night for months on humanity's secret project. What he and his team had accomplished in underground laboratories around the world was beyond anything that had ever been imagined. They had found a way to weaponize dark matter itself, turning the invisible substance that made up most of the universe into a weapon of unimaginable destruction. "The technology works," Dr. Torres explained to the assembled leaders. "We've tested it on a small scale, and the results are, well, they're exactly what we hoped for and exactly what we feared. We can collapse entire star systems if we need to." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had somehow managed to develop a weapon that could destroy civilizations that had existed for millions of years. It was their only bargaining chip, and everyone knew it. General Patricia Williams, head of the newly formed Earth Defense Force, stood up to address the room. "The weapon installations are complete. We have quantum dark matter generators hidden throughout our solar system, on the Moon, on Mars, and in the asteroid belt. If any hostile force attacks Earth, we can retaliate against their home systems immediately." The message that Earth was about to send was unlike anything that had ever been transmitted into space. It wasn't a plea for peace or an attempt at diplomacy. It was a promise of mutual destruction that would make even the most aggressive alien civilization think twice. The transmission began on a clear morning in June 2024. Radio, telescopes, and deep space communication arrays around the world synchronized their broadcasts, sending humanity's ultimatum across the galaxy at the speed of light. The message would take years to reach the farthest civilizations, but the closest ones would receive it within months. The content was brutal in its simplicity. "To all civilizations monitoring this system, Earth is aware of your presence and your intentions. Any hostile action against humanity will result in the complete annihilation of your home systems. We have developed weapons capable of collapsing stars and destroying entire solar systems. This is not a bluff, this is a promise. Attack us and you will cease to exist." Along with the message, Earth transmitted detailed technical specifications of their quantum dark matter weapons. The math was clear, the physics was sound, and the threat was real. Any civilization with advanced science would be able to verify that humanity was capable of doing exactly what they claimed. The response came faster than anyone expected. 3 weeks after the transmission, massive ships appeared at the edge of the solar system. They were unlike anything humanity had ever seen, sleek vessels that seemed to bend light around them as they moved. These weren't military ships sent to attack. They were diplomatic vessels, and they carried representatives from 3 of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. Dr. Olivia Martinez found herself once again at the center of world-changing events as she was selected to be part of the first contact team. The aliens had requested a meeting, and Earth's leaders had agreed to host them at a neutral location on the Moon. The first alien ambassador was unlike anything from science fiction movies. It stood nearly 8 feet tall, with crystalline skin that seemed to shift colors based on its emotions. It called itself Ambassador Kethvar, and it represented a civilization that had ruled over 17 star systems for over 2 million years. "Your species is young," Ambassador Kethvar said. Its voice translated through advanced technology that made it sound almost human. "You have achieved in mere centuries what took us millennia to develop. This rapid advancement is concerning to the galactic community." The second ambassador was even more alien. It appeared as a cloud of energy that could take solid form when needed. It represented the ethereal collective, a group of beings that had transcended physical form thousands of years ago. When it spoke, its words seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Your kind expands aggressively," the energy being communicated. "You consume resources, establish colonies, and show no signs of slowing your growth. In galactic terms, this behavior pattern indicates a species that will eventually threaten all other life forms." The third ambassador was perhaps the most disturbing. It looked almost human, but something was wrong with its proportions. Its limbs were too long, its eyes were too large, and when it smiled, there were too many teeth. It claimed to represent a coalition of younger civilizations that had been watching Earth for only a few hundred years. "We know what you become," this ambassador said, its voice carrying an edge of certainty that made everyone in the room uncomfortable. "We have seen species like yours before. They start with noble intentions, but they always end the same way. They consume everything in their path until nothing else can survive. The meeting lasted for 3 days, and every moment was tense. The aliens made their position clear. Humanity needed to stop all space exploration immediately. They wanted Earth to dismantle its space stations, recall all missions beyond the moon, and accept monitoring by galactic observers, who would ensure that humans never developed beyond their current level. President Chun listened to their demands with a calm expression, but everyone in the room could see the anger building behind her eyes. When the aliens finished presenting their terms, she stood up and delivered humanity's response. You come to our system and demand that we limit ourselves because you're afraid of what we might become, she said, her voice carrying the authority of an entire species. You want us to accept permanent subjugation because other civilizations in the past couldn't control themselves. That is not going to happen. She gestured to Dr. Torres, who activated a holographic display showing the quantum weapon installations throughout the solar system. We have given you proof of our capabilities. We have shown you that we can defend ourselves. Now let me be absolutely clear about Earth's position. The room fell silent as she continued. Humanity will continue to explore space, develop new technologies, and expand our presence in the galaxy. Any attempt to stop us, control us, or limit us will be met with immediate and overwhelming retaliation. We may be young, but we are not weak, and we will not be bullied. The alien ambassadors exchanged glances, their nonverbal communication methods unreadable to humans. Finally, Ambassador Kethvar spoke for all three of them. Your refusal to accept galactic oversight is disappointing, but not unexpected. We had hoped that your species would show wisdom beyond its years. Instead, you have chosen the path that leads to conflict. The energy being ambassador added its own warning. You have made your choice, humans. The consequences will follow shortly. As the alien ships departed from the solar system, Earth's leaders knew that they had just declared war on civilizations that had existed since before humans learned to make fire. The ultimatum had been delivered, the lines had been drawn, and there was no turning back. The galaxy now knew that humanity would not go quietly into the night. Whether that knowledge would save the human race or destroy it remained to be seen. The alarm systems on Mars Colony 7 started screaming at exactly 3:47 a.m. Earth Standard Time. Commander Lisa Rodriguez was jolted awake in her quarters, her heart racing as the red emergency lights bathed everything in an ominous glow. She had been dreading this moment for months, ever since the failed diplomatic talks with the alien ambassadors. Now it seemed like humanity's worst fears were about to come true. All hands to battle stations, she announced over the colony's communication system, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around her. This is not a drill, we are under attack. The Mars colony had been humanity's pride and joy, home to over 50,000 people who had volunteered to help establish humanity's first permanent settlement beyond Earth. They were scientists, engineers, farmers, and families who had believed in the dream of expanding human civilization across the solar system. Now they found themselves on the front line of a war that could determine the fate of their entire species. The attacking ships came from the direction of Alpha Centauri, sleek vessels that moved with a grace that human technology couldn't match. There were 12 of them, each one the size of a city block, and they approached Mars with the confidence of a civilization that had never known defeat. These weren't the same diplomatic ships that had visited Earth months earlier. These were warships, built for one purpose: to show humanity what happened to species that refused to accept galactic authority. Dr. Kevin Park, the colony's chief scientist, was monitoring the attack from the command center, his hands shaking as he watched. The alien ships positioned themselves around Mars. They're not trying to destroy the colony, he reported to Commander Rodriguez. They're being surgical about it. They want to send a message, not commit genocide. The first strike came without warning. A beam of energy, invisible to the naked eye but devastating in its effects, struck the colony's main power station. The lights went out across the settlement, and the protective atmospheric processors that kept the colonists alive began to fail. It was a calculated attack, designed to cripple the colony without killing everyone immediately. Commander Rodriguez knew she had only minutes to act before the backup life support systems failed completely. She opened a direct communication channel to Earth, knowing that this message might be the last thing she ever transmitted. Earth Command, this is Mars Colony 7. We are under attack by 12 alien vessels. They've disabled our main power systems and are demanding our immediate surrender. We estimate we have less than 6 hours of emergency life support remaining. The response from Earth came within minutes, and it carried the authority of every government on the planet. President Isabella Shun's voice crackled through the static-filled transmission, her words carrying a weight that made everyone in the Mars Command Center hold their breath. Commander Rodriguez, you and your people have served humanity with honor. Earth will not abandon you. Maintain your position and prepare for immediate retaliation against the attackers. What happened next would be remembered as the moment when humanity announced its arrival as a galactic superpower. Though the cost of that announcement would haunt the human race for generations, deep beneath the surface of Earth's moon, in a facility so secret that only a handful of people knew it existed, Dr. Michael Torres received the authorization codes that he had hoped he would never need to use. The quantum dark matter weapon system that his team had spent 2 years developing was about to be tested in the most dramatic way possible. Target confirmed, Alpha Centauri system, he announced to his team, his voice barely above a whisper. Authorization codes verified. All safety protocols are now disabled. The weapon itself was unlike anything that had ever been built before. It didn't fire projectiles or energy beams like the weapons in science fiction movies. Instead, it manipulated the fundamental forces of the universe, turning dark matter from an invisible, harmless substance into a tool of cosmic destruction. When Dr. Torres activated the system, the effects weren't visible from Earth. There was no flash of light, no explosion, no dramatic display of power. The weapon worked by altering the quantum properties of dark matter in the target system, causing it to interact with normal matter in ways that nature had never intended, 4 light-years away. In the Alpha Centauri system, the changes began immediately. The dark matter that surrounded the twin stars started to collapse inward, creating gravitational anomalies that pulled at the stars themselves. The process was irreversible, unstoppable, and absolutely terrifying in its efficiency. The alien ships around Mars detected the weapon activation immediately. Their sensors, far more advanced than anything humanity possessed, could measure the quantum fluctuations that signaled the beginning of their home system's destruction. For the first time in their civilization's history, they felt something that their species had forgotten. Pure, paralyzing fear. The lead alien commander opened a communication channel to Mars Colony 7, its translated voice filled with desperation. Humans, what have you done? Our home system shows catastrophic quantum collapse. Billions of our people live there. Stop this weapon immediately. Commander Rodriguez, who had been prepared to die defending her colony just minutes earlier, now found herself in the impossible position of speaking for all of humanity in its first act of galactic warfare. Your ships attacked our colony without provocation, she responded, her voice carrying a hardness that surprised even her. Earth warned you that any hostile action would be met with overwhelming retaliation. This is what overwhelming retaliation looks like. Back on Earth, Dr. Torres was monitoring the weapon's effects through deep space telescopes, his face pale as he watched an entire solar system begin to die. The twin stars of Alpha Centauri were being pulled apart by gravitational forces that shouldn't exist, their nuclear fusion processes disrupted by the quantum interference from weaponized dark matter. A gravitational collapse is accelerating, he reported to Earth Command, his voice filled with a mixture of scientific fascination and human horror. The stars will form a controlled black hole within the next 18 hours. Everything in that system will be consumed. The alien ships around Mars began withdrawing immediately, but not before sending one final message that would be heard across the galaxy. The humans have weapons that can destroy stars. They collapsed Alpha Centauri to save 50,000 of their people. This species is more dangerous than we calculated. As news of the attack spread through galactic communication networks, the response was immediate and polarizing. Some civilizations, particularly the older ones that had grown comfortable with their dominance, were horrified that a young species had developed such devastating weapons. Others, especially those that had been oppressed by the galactic superpowers, saw humanity as a potential ally that could help them break free from ancient chains of servitude. Dr. Olivia Martinez, who had discovered the original threat to Earth, found herself once again at the center of historic events as she monitored the galactic communications networks. The messages flooding through space painted a picture of a galaxy in shock, struggling to understand how a species that had barely learned to travel between planets had managed to develop weapons that could kill stars. The galactic community is splitting, she reported to the emergency session of world leaders that had convened immediately after the Alpha Centauri strike. About half of the known civilizations are calling for immediate military action against Earth. The other half are trying to open diplomatic channels, probably hoping to ally with us before we decide to target their enemies. President Chun listened to the reports with a grim expression, understanding that humanity had just crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. They had proven that they could defend themselves, but in doing so they had also proven that they were exactly the kind of dangerous species that the galaxy had feared they would become. How long do we have before they organize a response? She asked the assembled experts. General Patricia Williams, head of Earth's Defense Forces, consulted her intelligence reports before answering. Based on intercepted communications, we estimate that the hostile civilizations will need at least 6 months to coordinate their fleets and develop new strategies. They're not dealing with a primitive species anymore, and they know it. The demonstration at Alpha Centauri had achieved its immediate goal. Mars Colony 7 was safe, and the galaxy now understood that humanity was not defenseless. But it had also ensured that Earth would never again be left alone to develop in peace. The human race had announced itself to the galaxy not as peaceful explorers seeking knowledge, but as warriors capable of destroying entire civilizations. As the twin stars of Alpha Centauri collapsed into a black hole, taking 3 inhabited worlds and billions of alien lives with them, humanity faced the consequences of its first act of galactic warfare. They had saved their colony and proven their strength, but in doing so they had also guaranteed that the war that followed would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going on for 3 straight days, and tempers were running higher than anyone could remember in the past 1,000 years. Representatives from over 200 civilizations filled the massive crystal chamber that orbited the galaxy's center, their various forms of communication creating a chaotic symphony of clicks, whistles, telepathic waves, and translated speech. At the center of the debate was a holographic display showing the collapsed remains of the Alpha Centauri system, now nothing more than a spinning black hole where 3 thriving worlds had existed just earlier. The image served as a stark reminder of what the young human species was capable of, and it had shaken the galaxy's established order to its core. Ambassador Velthera of the Ancient Collective stood at the speaker's podium, her crystalline form shifting through different colors as she addressed the assembly. Her civilization had existed for over 5 million years, ruling peacefully over dozens of star systems, and she had never seen the galactic community so divided. "Fellow beings," she began, her translated voice carrying the wisdom of eons, "we face an unprecedented situation. A species that achieved spaceflight less than a century ago has demonstrated the ability to destroy entire solar systems. But we must ask ourselves, are they truly the monsters we fear, or are they simply defending themselves against our own aggression?" Her words sparked an immediate uproar from the militant faction. Admiral Zexkoth of the Dominion Fleet, a being that resembled a massive insect with armor-like skin, clicked his mandibles in anger as he demanded to speak. "They are exactly what we feared they would become," he declared, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 17 different species. They destroyed Alpha Centauri not in self-defense, but as a demonstration of power. Billions died to make a point. This is the behavior of a species that must be stopped before they spread beyond their system. The chamber erupted in debates. That had been brewing since the news of Alpha Centauri's destruction had spread across the galaxy. Some civilizations, particularly the older and more established ones, saw humanity as an existential threat that needed to be eliminated immediately. Others, especially those that had been oppressed by the galactic superpowers, viewed Earth as a potential ally that could help them challenge the existing order. Dr. Yuni Nakamura, Earth's newly appointed galactic ambassador, sat in the human observation booth, watching the proceedings with growing concern. She had been a linguistics professor just 6 months earlier, but the destruction of Alpha Centauri had thrust her into the most important diplomatic role in human history. The translation device in her ear was working overtime as she tried to follow the rapid-fire debates in dozens of alien languages. "They're splitting into two clear factions," she reported back to Earth through a secure quantum communication link. "The Supremacist Alliance wants us wiped out immediately, while the Pacifist Coalition is trying to find a diplomatic solution. But there's a third group that's staying quiet, and I think they might be the most important." Back on Earth, President Chun was coordinating humanity's response from the same underground bunker where the decision to destroy Alpha Centauri had been made. The weight of that choice was visible in her face, aging her years in just weeks. She knew that every decision she made now would affect not just the current generation, but the entire future of the human species. "What do we know about this third group?" she asked Dr. Martinez, who had become Earth's expert on galactic politics almost by accident. "They're calling themselves the Liberation Front," Dr. Martinez replied, consulting the intelligence reports that were streaming in from human monitoring stations throughout the solar system. They represent younger civilizations that have been kept under the control of the ancient powers for millennia. They see us as proof that the old order can be challenged. The implications were staggering. Humanity had inadvertently become the symbol of rebellion for oppressed species across the galaxy. The destruction of Alpha Centauri hadn't just been seen as an act of war. It had been seen as a declaration that the ancient galactic hierarchy could be overthrown. The first secret contact came through channels that Earth's intelligence agencies didn't even know existed. A small probe appeared at the edge of the solar system, broadcasting a message in perfect English that made everyone who heard it realize just how long humanity had been under observation. "People of Earth," the message began, "we are the Tau, collective representing 47 civilizations that have lived under galactic oppression for over 10,000 years. Your demonstration of power has given us hope for the first time in centuries. We wish to discuss an alliance." The probe contained detailed information about the galactic political situation that was far more comprehensive than anything Earth's own intelligence had gathered. It revealed a galaxy where ancient civilizations had maintained their dominance not through superior technology, but through fear and political manipulation. The young species were kept in line by the threat of containment actions, military interventions that usually resulted in the destruction of any civilization that grew too powerful too quickly. General Williams studied the intelligence data with the eye of someone who had spent her entire career understanding military threats. What she found was both encouraging and terrifying. "The good news is that we're not alone," she reported to the emergency cabinet meeting. "There are dozens of civilizations that want to see the current galactic order overthrown. The bad news is that the Supremacist Alliance has been preparing for this kind of situation for thousands of years." The probe's data revealed the true scope of what humanity was facing. The Supremacist Alliance controlled over 60% of the galaxy's military resources, including weapons that could sterilize entire planets from light years away. They had fleets of ships that could travel faster than light, and they had been building up their forces for a coordinated strike against any species that challenged their authority. But they had made one crucial miscalculation. They had assumed that any dangerous species would follow the same pattern of gradual expansion that had characterized galactic development for millions of years. They weren't prepared for a species that could jump directly from primitive spaceflight to star-killing weapons in less than a century. Dr. Torres found himself once again at the center of humanity's survival efforts as he worked to decode the technical specifications that the Tau Collective had shared. The alien weapons technology was based on principles that human science was only beginning to understand, but the dark matter weapons had given Earth scientists insights that their new allies found invaluable. They want to share their faster-than-light travel technology with us, he explained to the assembled leaders. In exchange, they want us to help them build quantum dark matter weapons of their own. The question is, do we trust them enough to give them the power to destroy star systems? The decision wasn't easy. Sharing the dark matter technology would make humanity's new allies powerful enough to challenge the galactic superpowers. But it would also mean that Earth would no longer be the only species capable of destroying entire civilizations. It was a risk that could either save humanity or doom the entire galaxy. President Chun made the decision that would reshape galactic politics forever. We share the technology, she announced, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's survival. If we're going to fight a war against civilizations that have existed for millions of years, we're going to need all the help we can get. The alliance that formed over the following weeks was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years found themselves working together, united by their shared desire to break free from the ancient powers that had controlled them for so long. Humans became the technical advisors, sharing their quantum weapons technology with allies who provided faster-than-light travel, advanced materials, and most importantly, detailed intelligence about the enemy's capabilities. But the Supremacist Alliance wasn't sitting idle. Intercepted communications revealed that they were mobilizing the largest military force in galactic history, pulling ships and resources from dozens of star systems. Their plan was simple and brutal: overwhelm Earth and its allies with such massive force that resistance would be impossible. Admiral Chun-Li, the newly appointed commander of Earth's expanding fleet, studied the intelligence reports with growing concern. "They're not just planning to defeat us," she reported to the Joint Command Center that now included representatives from 12 different species. "They're planning to make an example of us. They want to show the entire galaxy what happens to civilizations that challenge the established order." The war that was coming would be fought on a scale that the galaxy had never seen before. It would pit the ancient powers that had ruled for millions of years against an alliance of younger species led by humans who had learned to kill stars. The outcome would determine not just the fate of Earth, but the future of every civilization. In the galaxy. As fleets began moving across the galaxy toward what would become the first phase of the Galactic War, began not with a massive space battle, but with something far more terrifying: the systematic destruction of entire worlds that had dared to ally with humanity. Admiral Zexkoth of the Supremacist Alliance had decided to send a message that would echo across the galaxy for millennia. Dr. Uni Nakamura watched in horror from Earth's orbital command station as the reports came in. The Kepler 442 system, home to one of humanity's earliest allies, had been wiped out in less than 6 hours. 3 billion beings vaporized by weapons that turned their sun into a supernova. The Tau Collective's main research facility destroyed. When the Alliance collapsed the space around it into a miniature black hole. Entire civilizations that had existed for thousands of years, eliminated because they had chosen to stand with Earth. "They're not just fighting a war," she reported to the emergency council meeting that had been running continuously for 72 hours. "They're committing genocide on a scale that's never been seen before. Any species that's helped us, any world that's given us support, they're all being targeted for complete extermination." President Chun looked older than her years as she listened to the reports flooding in from across the galaxy. The underground command center beneath Geneva had become the nerve center for humanity's desperate fight for survival. And the weight of leading not just Earth but an entire galactic rebellion was crushing her spirit day by day. "How many have we lost?" she asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. 17 Allied civilizations have been completely destroyed, General Williams reported, her voice hollow with exhaustion. Another 34 are under direct attack. The Alliance isn't just trying to defeat us. They're trying to erase any trace that we ever existed. But humanity and its allies weren't giving up without a fight. Dr. Torres had been working around the clock to improve the quantum dark matter weapons, making them more powerful and more precise. The new generation of weapons didn't just destroy star systems. They could target specific planets, specific fleets, even specific sections of enemy ships. The turning point came when Earth's fleet, now consisting of ships from over 20 different allied species, managed to intercept a massive supremacist alliance battle group heading toward the Vega system. Admiral Chin Lee, commanding from the flagship Unity, made a decision that would be studied by military strategists for centuries to come. "All ships prepare quantum weapons," she ordered, her voice calm despite the magnitude of what she was about to do. "Target their entire fleet. We're not taking prisoners today." The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. When it was over, 3,000 Alliance ships had been reduced to quantum particles, and the message was clear: humanity and its allies could strike back, just as brutally as their enemies, but the Alliance's response was swift and merciless. Instead of attacking military targets, they began systematically destroying human colonies throughout the solar system. The research station on Europa vaporized. The mining colonies on the asteroids turned to dust. Millions of human civilians died in retaliation for humanity's military success. The war escalated beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Entire star systems became battlefields where weapons that could reshape reality itself were used without hesitation. The Alliance would destroy a rebel world, and humanity would respond by collapsing the home system of whoever gave the order. Ancient civilizations that had existed for millions of years found themselves facing extinction at the hands of a species that had barely learned to leave its home planet. Dr. Martinez, now serving as Earth's chief intelligence officer, made a discovery that changed everything. Deep in the intercepted Alliance communications, she found references to something called Project Final Solution, a plan to use the galaxy's central black hole as a weapon against Earth and all its allies. "They're planning to destabilize Sagittarius A star," she explained to the horrified assembly of world leaders. "If they succeed, the gravitational waves will destroy every solar system within 10,000 light-years of the galactic center. That includes Earth and about 60% of all known civilizations." The implications were staggering. The Alliance was willing to destroy most of the galaxy rather than allow humanity to continue existing. It was genocide on a scale that was almost impossible to comprehend. Trillions of beings across thousands of species, all sacrificed to eliminate one troublesome planet. President Chun realized that humanity had been backed into a corner where only the most desperate measures could save them. She authorized Dr. Torres to begin work on what would become known as the Galaxy Killer, a quantum weapon so powerful that it could theoretically destroy every star in the Milky Way simultaneously. "If they're willing to destroy 60% of the galaxy to stop us," she said during the final authorization meeting, "then we need to be ready to destroy 100% of it to stop them." The work proceeded in absolute secrecy, with only a handful of people knowing the true scope of what they were building. The weapon would use the galaxy's own central black hole as a power source, turning Sagittarius A star into a quantum cascade that would spread across the entire galactic disk at faster than light speeds. But building such a weapon required resources that Earth didn't have. The exotic materials needed could only be found in the cores of neutron stars, and the computational power required was beyond anything that existed. Humanity would need help from allies who were already fighting for their own survival. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. The ethereal collective, the energy beings who had been among the first to warn humanity about galactic opposition, revealed that they had been working on similar technology for thousands of years. They had never built it because the moral implications were too horrifying, but faced with extinction, they were willing to share their knowledge. Your species has shown us something we had forgotten. Their ambassador communicated during a secret meeting on the dark side of Earth's moon. Sometimes survival requires actions that no moral being should ever have to take. We will help you build this weapon, knowing that we may all be damned for it. The construction of the Galaxy Killer took place in the most heavily defended location. In human space, a facility built inside the sun itself, protected by quantum shields that made it invisible to all known detection methods. The work proceeded even as the war raged across the galaxy, with both sides suffering casualties on a scale that had never been seen before. Admiral Chun-Li found herself commanding fleets in battles that spanned multiple star systems simultaneously. Her ships, now equipped with the most advanced quantum weapons ever created, could destroy entire enemy fleets with single shots. But for every victory humanity achieved, the Alliance responded with atrocities that made the destruction of Alpha Centauri look like a minor skirmish. The final phase of the war began when Alliance scouts discovered the construction facility inside Earth's sun. Admiral Zexkoth, now commanding the largest military force in galactic history, made the decision that would ultimately doom his own cause. He ordered a direct assault on the solar system itself. "All fleets converge on the human home system," he commanded, his translated voice filled with the rage of someone who had seen his ancient civilization challenged by creatures he considered barely evolved animals. "We end this today. We destroy their world, their sun, and every trace that they ever existed." The Battle of Sol lasted for 6 days and forever changed the balance of power in the galaxy. Over 10,000 ships from dozens of different species fought in the space around Earth, using weapons that could crack planets and collapse time itself. The human population watched from underground shelters as the sky above them became a battlefield where gods fought with the power of stars. On the 6th day, as Alliance forces finally broke through Earth's outer defenses and began their final assault on the planet itself, President Chun made the decision that would echo through galactic history forever. She activated the Galaxy Killer, but instead of targeting the entire galaxy, she aimed it at something far more specific: the quantum field that held the Alliance's faster-than-light communication network together. The effect was immediate and devastating. Every Alliance ship in the galaxy suddenly found itself cut off from command, unable to coordinate, unable to call for reinforcements. Their massive advantage in numbers became meaningless when they couldn't work together. But the real masterstroke came next. Instead of destroying the crippled Alliance fleets, humanity broadcast a simple message across the galaxy: "Surrender now, and we will spare your home worlds. Continue fighting, and we will show you what the Galaxy Killer can really do." The war ended not with a bang, but with a whimper. One by one, Alliance commanders began surrendering their fleets rather than risk the total annihilation of their civilizations. The ancient powers that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years found themselves defeated by a species that had existed for barely 100,000 years. The Treaty of Titan, signed on Saturn's largest moon, established humanity as the galaxy's newest superpower. But more importantly, it established a new principle that would govern galactic civilization for Asterisk.